Responding to your question because it's very relevant to get a context on revenue mobilization. Indeed, over the last year or so, we have been seeing that revenues to GDP have not done very well. And part of it is because of the almost continuous shocks that Bangladesh endured, right? At the beginning, it was the external shocks, then it's the uprising, and then the transition to where we are today. But what I want to say there is that our assessment that for the future, not only for now, which is very challenging, but for the future, and I have in mind here graduation of Bangladesh from the LDC status to becoming a low-end emerging market. I think that ambition needs to come along with higher levels of higher ratios, revenues to GDP. So at this point, as you mentioned, the revenues to GDP has been either stable or even sometimes declining, and we want to about 7 to 8%, and that is extremely low. So even if we compare it with other countries at the same level, Bangladesh is very, very low. Just to give you a statistic, over the last 10 years, most of the countries, most developing economies are at the level of 10 to 15%. With Bangladesh at 8%, we see a lot of value for making this progress. Now on the specifics. The specifics is that we try to create momentum. So we try to change the minds of people, the community, that this revenue to GDP ratio has to be a larger number. And we are trying to find different ways of doing it. Last time, we tried by the measures you mentioned, and I think the measures have been quite successful, even though we had to make some adjustments for some sensitive issues, and we continue to do that. Now we continue that momentum, we believe, with some other measures, and I'll ask my colleague here, the expert on fiscal, to come in, both from VAT but also income tax measures now, to start looking at a ratio that increases. With that, let me turn it to Serkan, who can provide some more details.
Basically, our immediate focus is that to remove the extensive tax exemptions. The Bangladesh tax exemptions relative to the other country is quite significant. So therefore, as the Chris indicated, our immediate focus on the VAT and income tax side, extensive exemptions should be eliminated. In this regard, also the MBR agreed to this need. So therefore, the main focus is that particularly some of the sunset clause, which means they provide some the exemptions until a certain time. So far, the MBR continue to renew this SRO or the extension. Now the MBR, in principle, agreed to allow all sunset clause to lapse as planned, which means that gradually the tax exemptions will be lowered. This is more transparent, more fairer in the tax system. Also, countries the statutory VAT rate is 15%. However, many items is not applicable to 15%. So therefore, MBR now is actually increasing this truncated VAT rate to the 15%. Also, many items on the income tax side is actually 0% interest rate. Now, MBR intends to increase the minimum tax rate from the 0 to certain rate. So therefore, this will contribute to removing the tax exemptions. In the medium term, actually MBR is going to publish medium and longer term revenue strategy. Actually, this is a guiding principle and more sustainable revenue mobilization over the medium term. Thank you.
And for the question on the NPL,
on NPL's excellent question. So there is no doubt that a healthy and competitive banking sector, which is regulated and supervised in line with international best standards, is a prerequisite for a healthy growth rate. Now, the new regulation that you mentioned on asset classification and provisioning is a cornerstone of regulation that it is in line with international best practice, and we will commend the authorities to actually implement this rule that revealed the legacy problem of NPLs. NPLs did not, appear because of that classification; they were just revealed as a legacy problem. Now, having said that, the authorities have to strike the right balance between ensuring that the objectives of the policies are met while minimizing unintended consequences. On the stolen assets, at this point, we would just say that the authorities are making good steps in the right direction on coordinating domestic and global efforts to freeze, confiscate, and recover stolen assets.
Okay, thank you very much to our speakers. We come to the end of our press briefing. Thank you for joining us and look forward to meeting you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.